Good day, everybody. Welcome to Dental Voice on the Case with Zyris. My name is Rolando Mia. Today, we have a special guest, a long friend of ours and someone I'm especially excited to hear from. Please meet Dr. Foroud Hakim. Now, Dr. Hakim has had a practice in San Ramon, almost 30 years or so right now. And he's also a natural educator, having been educating people from the beginning of, I think, time. I'm going to say time. But he's also, in addition to being a professor at UOP and having been in those areas, he's also a member of the Catapult group. Good morning, Dr. Hakim. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Rolando. So great to be here.
So the topic today, and apologies, I've got dogs here that are excited to hear you too.
Yeah, absolutely.
The topic today is to um, basically spend some time to understand issues of practice viability in a post-COVID environment. So there are a lot of issues that dentists are facing in the post-COVID environment. In your opinion, what are some of those right now, and how do we need to deal with those?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, Rolando. And what I will do is maybe go to the backdrop of letting the audience know kind of how I'm wired and maybe how I think about my workday and my practice. I've always been very kind of keenly interested in areas of practice overhead, job cycling, profitability, redo rates, all the things that tend to go right to the bottom line of a practice, how efficient they are, how they produce, how they function, and how fiscally viable they are. While I talk a lot about restorative dentistry, a lot of my content also wires down to that level of granularity. So this is a big kind of a touch point for me, and I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy helping when I can other practitioners kind of improve in those areas. And so it's extremely, timely topic at this point because we've all got a whole new set of challenges. And I'll maybe start with this. We'll go back to pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. The average US practice overhead ran about $390 an hour. Now, of course, I know everybody's thinking, hey, I'm on the West Coast where we are. I'm on the East Coast. That we're astronomically higher than that, but average means average. So there are areas that are lower. So if we look at that and say $390 an hour, that comes down to $6.50 a minute. And that's how I break down practice. It's literally the level of granularity that I look at it. Every minute that I'm in this office costs me $6.50.
Wow. So I'm sorry, Dr. Hakim, do a lot of dentists know that? Or is that a metric that's commonly known by dental
Not at all.
professionals?
Not at all. People have a sense. They kind of have a sense because they look at their outgoing bills that they pay at the end of the month and income and talk to their accountants. And they kind of sometimes know an average overhead, but they don't look at it that precisely. If they did, I think they would be armed much better to kind of deal with some of the decisions they have to make every day in practice. I was forced into that because, like you said, I've been teaching from the start since graduation. Early on, I was teaching as a hobby. I was giving back to the alma mater. I was in private practice 4 days a week. And so I could afford to make errors. You messed up on a procedure, on something needed to redo. You did something that maybe wasn't the most efficient. You had 4.5 days a week to make up for it. Teaching was fun. As I caught the bug to teach more, I went to 2 days and 3 days, and eventually a 4-day-a-week tenure track faculty. And so now suddenly practice dwindled down to a day and a half a week. And as I did that and made those steps, I had to set up my practice in a way that was still fiscally viable. Now, granted, I had associates there and they were working when I wasn't there, but my time was gold when I was there. And I had to be very precise and very intentional about the way I practiced to stay afloat.
And now in post-COVID, everything seems to have changed.
Yeah, for sure. So, going back to that $6.50 a minute, I had to start thinking about, all right, I have a procedure that I'm going to do today. And if I can do it in 30 minutes rather than 40 minutes, I just cut 10 minutes off. And people say, oh, great, I can check some emails or I can get on Facebook or what have you. I looked at it as $6.50 a minute. I just saved $65. That savings now compounds into having 10 minutes more available to do another billable procedure. So you can see over the course of a typical 8-hour day, 3, 4, 5 days a week, how you practice, how that quickly compounds.
Right.
What we
Right.
don't know is what the new overhead is post-COVID. COVID's thrown us a big curveball. It essentially pulled the proverbial rug out from underneath our feet. And we, somewhere last March, mid-March, most of us were shut down, or we were doing very bare minimum skeleton emergency care, wondering what practices are we going to come back to? What's it going to look like? It was a scary time.
And now, with that metric, it's probably higher because if you think about it, things cost more now, right?
100%. So whatever our economic drains were before, we kind of knew them. It was our cost of practice acquisition, our loan for the practice, or if it was paid off. It was the cost of housing the practice, rent or the mortgage. It was staff and labor costs, products, materials, lab fees, the cost of insuring the practice. And we would balance that out with our fee schedules, what we billed out. Did we contract with insurances? Were we fee for service? Were we a hybrid of all that? And it was kind of more known. Suddenly post-COVID, after that 2 to 3 month interruption, we're coming back and it's a whole new world. I'll give you an example. We would use disposable tearaway gowns, and everybody knows this that use those. We used to get those for around $1 each, just under $1 each. When we came back, if we could get them, because it was impossible to get them, they were suddenly $12 each. And for a while, they were like that. Now they've maybe dropped by half or 2/3. I don't think they're ever going to be what they used to be. Even if supply is there, I think those that sell this have said, okay, we've managed to reduce the fee. Never mind that it's still 300% more than what it used to be. So these are the challenges. Boxes of gloves, masks, we know the scarcity there, and what that did, the cost of PPE skyrocketed. But on top of that, to make our practices hospitable for the patients, suddenly
Right.
we had to bring in more expensive, capital outlay technology. We had to bring in HEPA filters and things that recirculated the air, external vacuums that we would park outside the patient's mouth that would be sucking stuff, internal evacuation units like the ice light. Have you heard of ice light before, Rob?
No.
So many technologies. Fortunately, we had a lot of those in place, but so many technologies people had to spend money on. And at one point, people were terrified, thinking, oh my God, do I need to put $500,000 negative pressure rooms into every one of my ops? I can't function. Well, thank God that wasn't the case. And as we learned more about what we did, we got the confidence to understand, dentistry was already doing pretty well. We were one of the health arms that really did a good job of mitigating cross-contamination and infection and things like that. But there were certainly things we could do better. And this new novel virus presented itself in a different way than other ones did. And so it helped us up our game, but at a tremendous expense. Now, add to that, patient flow dramatically dropped. We were starting to hotel patients out in their cars, going from double or triple columns, if you work that way, down to a single column, putting more gaps in between to sterilize and disinfect the room, let aerosols settle, dealing with reluctance of patients to come in that were scared of getting infected, dealing with shortages in staff, which is going to go on for a long time. And that's a huge, huge barrier to kind of economic viability right now for the practices. So there's lots of stuff and who knows, it'll take a few years to measure this, but I guarantee you we're not at $390 an hour anymore.
So wait a minute. So in addition to the entire financial cost of doing business changing, what was it you mentioned? Fewer patients coming in because not only are they scared to come in, but also process has changed. Increased cost for everything that you're using in the practice, and that's something that doesn't seem like it's ever going to change. And then staffing issues. What talk consistently across the boards, staffing or lack of staffing or difficulty has been an issue. What are you experiencing with that, and what insights do you have around that?
Everybody's put an ad out for a new front office person, back office person, hygienist, assistant, knows exactly what I'm talking about. We already had a fluctuating workforce And depending on where you are geographically and what was going on, the economics in the area, we always knew that at times it was a employer's market, at times it was an employee's market, and then there was this kind of a sine wave that was stable, and we kind of knew how to deal with it. We kind of fought through the tougher. Suddenly, when people were nervous about coming back to a health care environment because of their own safety.
So, Dr. Hakim,
Yeah.
you dropped off for just a second, so we lost you for about 4 or
Nope.
5 seconds. Could you just kind of repeat what you said,
Yeah.
please?
So, with regards to staffing, the big change was suddenly people were afraid to come back to work because of their own safety. That was one factor. Next thing you know, depending on if they were the primary or secondary breadwinner in the family, they had to play the economics of, wait a minute, kids are at home. I'm homeschooling. I don't have childcare or daycare. Is it more viable for me to stay at home or come to work? What costs more? So safety, dealing with homeschooling, add to that the EDD and the economic relief and the kind of emergency funding that happened, where suddenly on top of the unemployment that everybody deserved and got, there was added stipends that just finally expired here in California. And I'm not saying that's a bad or good thing, but as people need to work, they're more likely to hit the job environment. And when they didn't need to and they were subsidized for, arguably a lot of good reasons, it made it even more tough for us to find staff. So, the take home is make your work environment as safe and as pleasant as possible, train them, and make your office an area that will draw new staff, because we're all in competition with each other, unfortunately, in that sense. And staff will find their way to what they think is the best opportunity possible.
So the advice that you're giving people, how do you express, or how do you kind of show that you are making it the best place for them, and that you're taking care of them?
So a perfect example is treat staff like your patients. And that's one of the things we did. Was at first we had to put a very conscious and intentional campaign out there to let our patients know that the practice, whether it's for their care or for the staff or their work environment, is safe, and we're committed to making this as hospitable, and as we wanted them to understand this is safer than being home in your living room.
Right.
Because there was a lot of stuff flying through the news and the internet about that. So we put it intentionally on our websites, and we put it on our social media outlets out there saying, hey, we have these HEPA filters. These are the procedures we do between everything. Here's what we do to check temperature and do screenings and all the things that are now automated via text to our patients and our staff. Here's what we do to keep you safe. Here's where we're spending the money. Here's how much we care about you. This should be an area that you enjoy coming in, whether it's to take care of your health or to, earn a living, earn an income, and take home money to your family. That message has to be intentional, has to be gated correctly, and sent out constantly. So that's step one. Secondly, to actually make the practice viable so that you can give raises when they're merited, sometimes give raises just to surprise people and make their day. You have to be able to afford that. How can you afford that when your columns are shrinking and maybe the patients aren't coming in like they used to be? That's where the challenge lies. And it comes down to your online reputation, the Google reviews that you get, and all these things fit in together.
So it sounds like it's, I love the context around treat your team, your staff, like your patients, because a lot of times clinicians are so focused on, I've got to do things, but the team is feeling the same level of, I'm going to call it angst that everybody else is, especially now with this new variant coming in, and there's a lot of uncertainty. How do you, with regard to these metrics in the practice, do you share those with your team, or is that something that they also need to understand? How do you handle that?
Absolutely. I mean, especially in their areas of responsibility, I don't overwhelm them with things that maybe don't affect them or they're not in control of, but definitely areas of their responsibility when it comes down to response time to patients' inquiries, leads that come through some of our websites that we use, getting patients in a timely fashion for emergencies. More importantly, trying to create an environment where we have as few emergencies as possible, where patients don't have to come in unexpectedly a second or a third time to deal with something that was maybe under our control, which is maybe how a temporary was placed, or how a filling was done, or where there was sensitivity, things like that. And so trying to allow them to work as efficiently as possible while still taking the precautions needed is really critical in creating an environment that can happen in.
And I like the idea around constantly communicating with patients,
Mhm.
because it's almost like, oh, we have this, and then we kind of, I'm I'm noticing, and I'm curious to see your perspective. Are is dentistry kind of defaulting back to what has always been done, because we're not seeing the same level of infection and all that type of stuff? So, oh, we're good, and then we tend to forget that this is still out there. So
Mhm.
it's an ongoing reinforcement, it sounds like.
It is, and it takes you kind of having your finger on the pulse of the given patient in the chair. They all have different priorities. Some are about, you know what, this is all overblown. Come in. I know you're always taking good care of me. It's safe. Take care of me. And those patients probably prefer to hear a different message. And other ones are very keenly sensitive to this notion of COVID and the variants and what else is still out there. And they need to hear a different message. So you're always kind of packaging and presenting that message in the best light possible to put everybody at ease. And I can't tell you that online reputation, how important that is, how you are promoting your practice as a safe place to be, that's still able to offer all the services we did before in a safe way at the highest quality. And one of the big things I talked earlier when I made that example of 40 minutes becomes 30 minutes, there are two absolute deal breakers in that equation for me. One is, never can patient outcomes or quality of care sacrifice.
Right.
And the other is, never should it lead to an increased redo rate by going faster, or lead to a deteriorating online reputation. Because patients say, well, wait a minute, every time Dr. Hakim does something, it seems like I have to go back to adjust the bite or re-cement a temporary over and over again. Because while you save time on the front end, you pay for it on the back end. You have less new patients that come in, more disgruntled patients, poorer reviews. And so it just becomes a domino effect. So historically in dentistry, we were all taught this in dental school. Anytime you do something faster, it was always perceived as kind of a shortcut or reduced quality. That notion of being faster, more efficient at equal or possibly increased quality is a big, big deal. And I've resisted up to this point talking about some of the products that Zyris provides, but they've been integrated into our office for over a decade now. And I feel lucky that we were armed in our practice with some of those technologies. Now, we've always had ice lights at the office. In fact, here at the school behind me, we have giant clinics on 2 floors with hundreds of operatories, and there's isovacs in every operatory. And
Cool.
so that really put us in a competitive advantage, in addition to some of the other technologies we added, where we could go there and tell the patients, hey, remember the thing that I put in your mouth that helped you get through the appointment faster? Remember how I explained to you that you're going to have less sensitivity or less failure because we did bonding under isolation? Well, guess what? This technology that helps mitigate aerosol control has been under our noses this whole time, and we already have it available for you. You're safe being here. That's been such a powerful message for the patients.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, if I were to ask you, for clinicians who are sitting there and they're faced in a post-COVID environment with all of the issues you just listed, decreasing patient rates, staffing issues, overhead increases, costs coming hitting right and left, the fact that all of a sudden now there's the confidence isn't quite there. If I were to ask you to summarize top 3 things that they need, if you
Mhm.
were to say, hey, here are the top 3 things you need to do now,
Yeah.
what would those be? Pay attention to now. What would those be?
So number one will be right what I just let out of, meaning make every hour more efficient. So if I can get every procedural hour to drop from 60 minutes to about 45, save, 25% of the time. 15 minutes of every hour times 8 hours suddenly becomes 2 extra treatment hours. That more than makes up for a little bit of gapping between patients or disinfection time. More than makes up for it. especially since you have active patients that you can put new procedures there. So technologies like the awesome Velop Mister that you guys are coming to disinfect rooms with, coming out with, the Isolite, all these technologies help you increase your speed, but at the same time, increase safety and quality. That's paramount. Secondly, making that environment an environment that you can retain or attract staff members, because everybody can kind of bootstrap in for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, say, okay, you're job sharing, you're doing overlap, you're cleaning the back and the front. We're going to run around like crazy. We're short today, but that wears on you after time. So being fully staffed is a big deal. And third, managing your online reputation, which means an outward communication with the patients and an inward magnetism for new patients to draw, so that we're adding new novel procedures to existing recall pools of procedures from our patients that are already willing to come see us.
That's beautiful. You know, it's interesting, Dr. Foroud. It seems so simple, but it's hard. I understand metrics. You know, surprising how few people know. What is it? $6.50 a minute. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. So if you if you do nothing for 10 minutes, that's opportunity. That's and it's something that's not top of mind. The other thing too is, I would say the context of, you know, do more when you can, but also take care of your team. That's come across incredibly, your team, like your patients, incredibly strong in your discussion this morning. And that resonates really strongly with me, because, you know, that's kind of the core of what your practice is. So absolutely. If people wanted to reach out to you and ask you questions, or wanted to engage you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I love when I go and do educational meetings, I always share my email, and I love to hear back from attendees. Same thing. Or maybe come out and speak to their group. The best way for me is email.
Dr. Hakim, I'm sorry, you dropped off again. So.
Okay. But like I said, I love to hear from people in the audience, whether it's at one of my educational venues or here. The best way is email, and I love to keep in touch afterwards. So you guys can certainly, I don't know if you have the ability to post that on there, but I'll spell it out for you right now. It's my first name, F, last name, Hakim, Hakim, @pacific.edu. That's my school email address. And the alternate one for my professional speaking is Foroud, Foroud, @catapulteducation.com. Either of those work.
Fantastic. And if people wanted to check out your practice in San Ramon, what would be the best way to do that?
Besides going online and checking out the website, I kind of have an open door policy. I let colleagues come and see it. Students from our class, from the school, will sometimes come and do little mini rotational, 1-day internships there. So again, reach out to me if you're local. We can talk.
Outstanding. First of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. The topics that we could probably spend a separate discussion around each of the topics. And would you be open to maybe doing that sometime
100%.
later as we get?
100%.
Outstanding. Awesome. Hey, everybody, those of you who are watching this, if you like this content, please share. If you want to reach out to Dr. Foroud Hakim, please go to his website or email him. And if you have any questions for us, please let us know. Dr. Hakim, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing more from you. The topics are I love the way you outline them. Make them simple, make them actionable. So thank you for that.
It's been a pleasure, Ro. Thank you so much for the platform.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. Be safe, everybody. And we look forward to the next one.
Bye now.